Hi, you guys. This is Amanda. I'm back. The last video I posted was trash, so we're gonna try this again. I'm here to do a book review on the book that I just read last week. It's called Not Without Laughter. I'm pissed that edit or that last video that I shot didn't, quite work because the audio was trash. I think it was how I was holding my phone, but we're just gonna have to do it again, you know. Anyway, so I read the book Not Without Laughter by Langston Hughes, and the book was excellent. It's an excellent coming of age tale about a young boy. It's from the time that he's like 9 or 10 up until he's about 16 or 17 years old. And it takes place in Kentucky. And it just basically speaks on the black community during the 1910s because it takes place from like 1912 to 1918, around when the First World War had began. So the main character is Sandy. He is like 9 or 10 years old, and um, they live in Stanton, Kentucky, and he lives with his grandmother, who is Auntie Hager, his mom Angie, his aunt Harriet, and then um they live in the house together. Now his aunt Tempe, who is the oldest of the three sisters, she does not live there anymore. She does not associate with them. She's like doing her own thing. Like she thinks she's above them and better than them. We'll come back to that. But the story is just a very strong telling of what it is to be black in America during this time period and what it means to start with nothing and try to become something. Like this it really just parallels what black people experience today in America, and it just really makes you think like, wow, some of the issues and some of the things that they experience and that they go through uh, in this book, in this story, we are still experiencing and still dealing with to this day. And this book is meant to take place in 1912 to 1918 or 1917. Mind you, the book was published in 1920. And it's now 2020. And we are now, it's 100 years later, and we're still dealing with a lot of the same issues that these people had to face. And so, it's disheartening, but I just see the beauty so much in the story because of just how the black community is. The story is about a family, and it's very heavily driven by the matriarch of the family. And much like the black community is very much a matriarchal community. So the strength and the installation of pride and power that we place in one another comes from the women in our culture. And I feel like there was a sense of community and respect and reverence back then that men had for women versus what I'm seeing and experiencing now with how we are treated within our community. Um there's just so many parallels. So let's just talk about like some of the commonalities of from the book to present day. One of the unfortunate, common factors that I've noticed in the book was the colorism was a thing and still is a thing in the book and in real life in modern day 2020. Um, there was one scene in the book where I recall, well, it wasn't a scene, Amanda. It was a moment in the book or a chapter in the book where Sandy, the main character, is being watched by his aunt Harriet. She's like the youngest of the group. She's like the most rebellious, and she just wants to be out, be free, be young, be wild. She's a teenager, so she's like, I'm gonna sneak you out, and we're gonna go to this party, and you're not gonna say anything to your grandmother because I'm trying to have some fun. Like, let's go out. So they go to the party, they have to dance or whatever. Sandy's there, he's tired, he's over it. He's a kid. Like, he's like, I don't want to be out all night. I want to go to sleep. And so while they're there, like, the band, they're like on the speaker, on the microphone, playing, you know, the strings, the jazz or whatever. And they on the microphone talking about some yellow bones come close, or yellow girls come close, brown skin girls come close to the stage, get close to the stage, yellow girls come close to the stage, but black girls stay back. And I'm just like, this is the same thing that we are dealing with within our community. It's just a different time period. Another commonality that very much parallels with today is the lack of a paternal figure in um, Sandy's life. Sandy's parents were married, but Sandy's father was always gone. He was always looking for work, and Angie was just always pining and thinking about this man, and she was just so pressed on Jim Boy, who is Sandy's dad. And I was just like, sweetie, this man, he's always finding ways to leave you and go find work. Now it is a good reason as to why he wasn't around, because he was working. So back then, during the Jim Crow era, it was very hard for black people to find consistent, stable work in their hometown, and be able to create a structural life and foundation for their families, for their wives, for everybody to come home and be together every night for dinner. They didn't have that back then. Like, there was no work in the town, and I'm talking about actual physical work with like your hands and like laboring. Black men had to leave and go elsewhere and make a living elsewhere, and it's like, okay, you're making that sacrifice to go make money elsewhere, but you're also sacrificing the time of raising your kids and actually being with your spouse, and actually creating this familial balance and just foundation for your children and for your family. So with him always being gone, it's like the absentee father was also a factor that played a major role in this story, and it definitely affected it affected Sandy, and just how the way he saw his father. There are aspects of that he saw from his father that he wanted to possess and be like eventually when he got older. Because there was a point where in the book where Sandy's like, I hope she doesn't expect me to love her. I still have to go travel the world like my dad. And I'm like, okay. But yeah, so, it's just a really good coming of age tale about this young boy, and, him just finding his way and understanding his way in the world. But also the sisters, Angie, Tempe, and Harriet, their character development was excellent in my opinion. All these characters are black. All these characters are women, with the exception of Sandy and Sandy's father. But the way these women were crafted and curated and just thought about, they were so unique, and just their stories and their backstories and just and their overall arc. Like, I really appreciated the variety that we got here, because it's not something that you see too often in modern day storytelling. But you could tell Langston Hughes really took his time with this. So Sandy's mother is Angie, and Angie is the middle daughter, and she is basically a workhorse. She works all the time, and she's very concerned about finding her man and being with her man, and wherever her man is where she needs to be. And she spends the majority of the book being just lovesick over this man not being in her life. And for me, what I took from Angie was she was chasing him and making excuses for Jim Boy, who is Sandy's father. Every opportunity Jim Boy got, he took to not be there. The war happened, and he said, I'm signing up. And they sent him over to Europe. And I'm like, who does that? Like, he didn't have to sign up for the war. I don't know anybody who would willingly sign up to go to war, especially during this time when black people were so looked down upon. Like, why would you want to fight for this country during this time when you really had no real rights anyway? But I feel like he was trying his best to avoid being with this woman, which is just, I don't know. And then everybody's opinion of him throughout the book, like me personally, I didn't think of Jim Boy as a bad character until I was completely done with the book, and I really just took a step back and been like, and just looked at the his dynamic between Angie and his son Sandy, because there was a point in time in the book where Sandy was off with Aunt Tippy for like 5 years, and I'm like, y'all not gonna send for him? Like, I'm not gonna let my child just be living with one of my sisters for a half a decade, even if I can't afford them. Like, I would find a way to make a way to try to afford them. Like, I don't know. Angie's character was just so selfish to me. And then there was a point in time in the book where she was like, I really don't think that you should go back to school, Sandy. I really need you to start working and like really helping me with the bills. And her sister Harriet was like, "No, ma'am. He needs to stay in school and make something of himself." Like his grandmother has always told him, because throughout the book, Sandy's relationship with his grandmother is very strong, and just her opinions of him and what he can amount to be and how smart he is. She just poured into him all the time and told him, make something yourself so that you can be more for yourself, for this family, but more the overall for your race, for black people, because we need that. And she really would reference like W.E.B. Du Bois and Booker T. Washington. And she would say, these are very smart black men. Like, you want to strive to be like these black men. And it's funny that she would always mention them, and then the sister would mention them too, the oldest sister, Aunt Tempe. So when he stays with Aunt Tempe, he gets a lot of structure, he gets a lot of, balance in his life. And Aunt Tempe is, an uppity Negro. She is a dark-skinned black woman who married a very fair-skinned black man who could pass for white. And Aunt Tempe believes that, if we just assimilate and we carry ourselves with dignity and we don't listen to that terrible jazz music that is for the devil, and if we go to church and we just be the best Negroes we can be, they will respect us. They will always respect us if we just assimilate and be like them. And it's interesting that she says that, because I speak to black people all the time who have said this. I was just talking in my DMs today, and somebody said, well, if we don't do XYZ, then they'll respect us. In my rant that I had on IG about the N word. Yeah. And I quickly let them know that, sweetie, they'll never respect us. They won't. So you might as well just be free to express yourself how you want to express yourself, and not police yourself from whoever isn't black. But anyways, Aunt Tippy is very much like a conservative. Like, Aunt Tippy is, who's that girl, that black girl on Fox News? I think her name starts with a C. I don't know, but Aunt Tippy would watch Fox News. Aunt Tippy would have voted for Trump. Aunt Tippy is a coon. So when he stayed with Aunt Tippy, she told him, he would say, Grandma says that I should strive to be more, and I should strive to get my education and be more like Booker T. Washington. And she said, what? Booker T. Washington? You mean W.E.B. Du Bois? He went to Europe and he studied in Europe, and he got, his European studies and all this bullshit. Like, she just really does not like blackness. And Sandy had a very hard time living with her. He found it just so, he just, and I can understand why, because I have people like that in my family who are, it's a no. So then there's Aunt Harriet. Aunt Harriet is, the youngest. She's a wild child. She's done some things that aren't so much, should be so proud of. And there's there's Aunt Hager, or Grandma Hager, who is the grandma and the parent to Harriet, Angie, and Tempe. And she's very Bible, by the book, very strict, just, but, and also a very forgiving type of black person, which is very common with older black people. And Harriet was like, no, you need to stay in school. And Harriet went off and lived her dream. She became a singer, and she was working in the circus, and then she was working on stage and performing. And, she got in some trouble along the way, but this book was just it just touched me on a very, like, deep level, because I just know all these characters so specifically. And also, just culturally, what the book speaks on, it just lets me know that not much has changed, and we really need to come together as a community, black people, and make these changes. But yes, I recommend you all reading Not Without Laughter by Langston Hughes, because it is an incredible book and gives you a lot of insight of the past, so we can get a clearer vision of where we're going in the future. So, yeah, until next week, have a great day.